HOA Karen blocked my driveway every day. Then I built 4-ton planters she couldn't move. Before we dive into this concrete jungle warfare, drop a comment telling me which country you're watching from. Trust me, entitled neighbors exist everywhere, but this structural engineer just taught an HOA Karen a lesson she'll never forget. My name is Marcus Rivera, and I'm a structural engineer running a concrete construction business in suburban Texas. When I bought my first home in Meadowbrook Estates back in 2019, I had no idea my life was about to become a living nightmare, all because of one white Escalade and its insufferable owner, Linda Thompson. Just hearing that name made people in my neighborhood roll their eyes. This 58-year-old woman, with her perfectly highlighted blonde hair, designer sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, and an attitude that reached higher than Mount Everest, had been the HOA president for 7 years straight. 7 years. Nobody ran against her because, frankly, nobody wanted to deal with her drama. Linda drove a pearl-white Cadillac Escalade that she treated like it was Air Force One. That vehicle was her throne on wheels, and she acted like every inch of our neighborhood belonged to her personally. The HOA president badge had gone straight to her head, transforming community service into a personal dictatorship. My house was a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman-style home with a 2-car garage and a spacious driveway that could easily fit 4 vehicles. I'd worked my tail off for years, saving every penny from my construction projects, to afford this place. It was my pride and joy, my first real achievement in America after immigrating here with nothing but a degree and a dream. The driveway was one of my favorite features. I'd even paid extra to have it professionally sealed and lined. It was pristine, smooth, and absolutely perfect. That's probably why Linda wanted it. It started innocently enough on a Tuesday afternoon in March 2020, right before the world went crazy with the pandemic. I was working from home, reviewing structural plans for a commercial project, when I heard a vehicle pull into my driveway. I glanced out the window and saw Linda's Escalade parked right behind my Honda Civic, completely blocking my garage. Weird, I thought. Maybe she needs to ask me something. I waited. And waited. 30 minutes passed. No doorbell. No knock. Nothing. Finally I walked outside. Linda was sitting in her Escalade talking on her phone, completely oblivious to the fact that she was blocking my property. I knocked gently on her window. She held up one finger, the universal wait signal, and continued her conversation for another 5 minutes while I stood there like an idiot in my own driveway. When she finally rolled down her window, she didn't apologize. Instead, she looked annoyed that I'd interrupted her. Yes? She asked like I was a door-to-door salesman. Hi, Linda. I just wanted to let you know you're blocking my garage. I need to run some errands, so if you could... Oh, I'll just be a few more minutes, she interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. I'm coordinating the HOA meeting across the street at the clubhouse. Your driveway provides better cell reception than the guest parking. Better cell reception? Better cell reception? I understand, but this is my private property and I really need to. Marcus, as HOA president, I sometimes need to utilize community resources for official business. I'm sure you understand the importance of community service. And with that, she rolled up her window and went back to her phone call. I stood there stunned. Did she just claim my driveway was a community resource? 20 minutes later, she finally left. I shook my head and went back inside, figuring it was a one-time thing. I was so wrong. The next week it happened again. And then again. And again. Linda had established a pattern. Every time there was an HOA meeting, which happened twice a month, she'd park an MY driveway instead of using the perfectly good guest parking spaces literally 50 feet away. When I confronted her the third time, her excuse had evolved. Marcus, I've reviewed the HOA bylaws, and there's a provision for emergency access to private driveways during community events. As president, I'm authorized to designate temporary parking arrangements. Linda, that's for actual emergencies like fire trucks or ambulances. Not for your personal convenience. Her eyes narrowed. Are you refusing to cooperate with HOA leadership? I'm asking you to respect my property rights. I'll make a note of your non-cooperative attitude in the next board meeting, she said coldly, then climbed into her Escalade and stayed there for another hour. That's when I realized, this wasn't about parking. This was about power. Linda was testing me, asserting dominance, showing the neighborhood that she could do whatever she wanted. And if I pushed back too hard, she'd make my life miserable through HOA fines, violations, and bureaucratic harassment. But I wasn't about to become her doormat. Things got progressively worse over the next 2 months. Linda started parking in my driveway not just during meetings but randomly throughout the week. She claimed she was conducting property inspections, and needed secure parking, while she walked around critiquing everyone's mailboxes and lawn heights. One morning, I found her Escalade in my driveway at 7 a.m. She was inside it, eating a breakfast sandwich and watching YouTube videos on her iPad, parked right behind both of my cars so I couldn't leave for work. When I knocked on her window, already running late for a client meeting, she barely acknowledged me. "Linda, I have a work appointment. I need to leave. Now. I'm finishing my breakfast, Marcus. Give me 10 minutes. You can finish your breakfast anywhere else. This is MY property." She turned up her iPad volume. I was this close to losing it, but I took a deep breath. Causing a scene would only make things worse. So I waited, seething, for 15 agonizing minutes while she slowly finished her meal, checked her emails, and finally, backed out of my driveway. As she drove away, she had the audacity to wave at me cheerfully. That night, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board. Linda was, of course, on that board. The complaint went nowhere. The absolute breaking point came in July. I'd taken a week-long vacation to visit family in Pakistan, my first trip home in 3 years. It was supposed to be relaxing, a chance to reset and recharge. When I returned, exhausted from the 24-hour journey, I pulled onto my street at midnight and found a beaten-up Ford F-150 parked in my driveway. Not just parked, this truck was leaking oil all over my pristine concrete. I was furious. I parked on the street and marched up to the truck. There was a note on the windshield. "Guest parking for community use. Authorized by HOA President Linda Thompson." Guest parking? My driveway. I called Linda immediately. It rang 6 times before she picked up, sounding annoyed. "Marcus, do you know what time it is? Do you know that there's a stranger's truck in MY driveway, leaking oil all over my property?" "Oh, that's Kyle. He's dating my daughter Brittany. I told him he could use the guest parking while he's visiting." "Linda, that's not guest parking. That's my private driveway. According to HOA guidelines, residents are encouraged to accommodate community guests during peak visiting periods. There is no such guideline. You're making this up. Marcus, your hostile tone is inappropriate. I'm documenting this call. We'll discuss your attitude at the next board meeting. Good night." She hung up. I stood there in the dark, jet-lagged and furious, staring at this stranger's oil-leaking truck in my driveway, and something inside me snapped. Linda wanted to play games? Fine. But she was playing against a concrete construction specialist who knew exactly how to make problems permanent. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with anger, frustration, and, gradually, a plan. See, Linda's whole power trip depended on one thing: access. She assumed she could park wherever she wanted because there was nothing physically stopping her. A simple driveway was just an empty space she could exploit. But what if it wasn't empty anymore? I spent the weekend sketching designs. Not just any designs, beautiful, professional, legally bulletproof designs. 4 massive decorative concrete planters. Each one would be 4 feet tall, 3 feet wide, reinforced with rebar and filled with soil and plants. When fully loaded, each planter would weigh approximately 2,000 pounds. That's 4 tons of immovable concrete, strategically positioned to block vehicle access while creating stunning landscaping. The genius was in the presentation. These weren't parking barriers. They were high-end garden features that would actually increase my property value. I checked every regulation. City building codes. No permit required for decorative landscaping under 6 feet tall. HOA bylaws. Residents are encouraged to enhance curb appeal through professional landscaping. Fire code. Emergency vehicle access through my property wasn't required since there was street access. The property line setbacks. Everything would be within my property boundaries. This was going to be absolutely, completely, 100% legal. And absolutely, completely, 100% impossible for Linda to move. I took Monday and Tuesday off work. This project needed my full attention. Monday morning, my crew arrived at 6 a.m. 3 of my best guys from the construction company, plus a concrete mixer truck. We worked fast and efficiently. This was what we did for a living. First, we marked out the positions. 2 planters flanking the driveway entrance, 1 on each side about 3 feet in from the sidewalk, creating a narrow passage that a person could walk through but a car absolutely could not. 2 more planters positioned further back, creating a secondary barrier. Then we poured the bases, thick concrete pads that would anchor everything to my existing driveway. We embedded rebar deep into those bases, creating structures that would require jackhammers and serious equipment to remove. While the base is cured, we built the planter forms. Reinforced steel frames wrapped in decorative stamped concrete that looked like natural stone. We worked through lunch, adding decorative details, ensuring every angle looked professional and intentional. By Tuesday afternoon, the planters were complete. We filled them with high-quality topsoil and planted an assortment of beautiful flowers, bright red geraniums, cascading purple petunias, and ornamental grasses that added height and movement. The effect was stunning. My driveway entrance now looked like the entry to a luxury estate, with elegant planters creating a sophisticated, manicured appearance. It also happened to be completely impassable for vehicles. My crew packed up, cleaned everything spotless, and by 5 p.m. it was done. I stood back and admired our work. 4 tons of decorative concrete, professionally installed, absolutely beautiful and totally legal. Linda's parking days were over. Linda discovered my new landscaping that evening around 6 p.m. I was inside making dinner when I heard tires screech, followed by a car door slam, followed by, "What the hell is this?" I smiled. Showtime. I walked outside casually, pretending to be surprised to see her. "Oh, hi Linda. Do you like the new planters? I've been wanting to upgrade the landscaping for a while." Her face was red. Like tomato red. She was shaking with rage. You can't do this. You've blocked access to community parking." "Community parking? Linda, this is my private driveway. These are decorative planters. Completely within my property rights. This is deliberate. You did this to prevent me from parking here." "I did this to beautify my property. If it happens to prevent unauthorized parking on my private driveway, well?" I shrugged innocently. "That's just a bonus. I'm calling the police. Feel free. I have all my permits and receipts." She actually tried to push one of the planters. Put both hands on it and pushed with all her might. It didn't budge even a millimeter. She pushed harder, grunting with effort, her designer shoes slipping on my driveway. "Linda, each one weighs about a ton. You're not moving them. You can't do this." "Actually, I can." And I did. "Have a great evening." I went back inside, leaving her standing there sputtering with rage beside her Escalade, staring at 4 tons of concrete that had just ended her parking reign of terror. As expected, Linda didn't take her defeat gracefully. The next morning, I received a formal HOA violation notice. Unauthorized structural modifications without board approval. I responded with copies of my permits, photos of the HOA bylaws encouraging landscaping improvements, and a polite letter from my attorney pointing out that everything was 100% compliant. Violation dismissed. Then Linda tried claiming the planters were a safety hazard that blocked emergency vehicle access. I invited the fire marshal to inspect my property. He took one look, confirmed that emergency vehicles had full street access and didn't need to use my driveway, complimented my professional concrete work, and wrote a letter stating everything met safety codes. Strike 2. Linda then attempted to rally the neighborhood against me, sending out an email blast claiming I was creating barriers to community cohesion and refusing to support HOA initiatives. That backfired spectacularly when 3 other neighbors responded, publicly sharing their own stories of Linda parking in their driveways without permission. Turns out, I wasn't her only victim, just the first one to fight back. The best attempt came 2 weeks later. Linda hired a concrete removal company to come to my house, without my permission, and demolish my planters. The crew leader knocked on my door looking uncomfortable. "Sir, we were hired to remove these planters, but, we need to see the property owner's authorization." "I'm the property owner and I absolutely did not authorize this." "Yeah, that's what I thought. The lady who hired us said she was the HOA president and had authority to order removal." "She doesn't. These are on my private property." He nodded. "Look, even if you had authorized it, these planters are serious work. Reinforced bases, embedded rebar. We'd need permits, heavy equipment, concrete saws. We're talking $18,000 minimum, maybe more depending on what we find when we start cutting. $18,000 to remove them. I'd built them for $4,500. The crew left. Linda apparently refused to pay for the removal when she heard the price. Linda's obsession with my planters became the talk of the neighborhood. At the next HOA meeting, which I attended for the first time ever, 3 homeowners stood up and formally complained about Linda's unauthorized use of their driveways over the years. One resident, an elderly man named Mr. Patterson, revealed that Linda had been parking in his driveway for years, claiming she needed to monitor his property, because he'd received HOA violations for letting his grass grow too long. Another neighbor, Sarah Chin, explained that Linda had blocked her in multiple times, making her late for work, and when Sarah complained, Linda had written her up for having the wrong color mailbox. The meeting got heated. People were angry. Linda tried to defend herself, but her excuses sounded hollow and absurd when everyone heard them all at once. I was providing community oversight. You were trespassing on private property. I had authority as HOA president. You had no such authority and you know it. The board voted 6-1 to formally censure Linda for abuse of power. The only vote against it was Linda herself. 2 weeks later, a lawyer representing 4 homeowners, including me, sent a letter to Linda and the HOA board threatening legal action for ongoing harassment and property rights violations. That's when Linda finally broke. She resigned as HOA president via email, citing health reasons and an increasingly hostile neighborhood environment. Translation: she couldn't handle being held accountable. The aftermath was glorious. The new HOA president, a retired teacher named Patricia Gomez, was everything Linda wasn't: reasonable, respectful, and actually interested in serving the community rather than ruling it. Patricia's first official act was sending a neighborhood-wide email apologizing for Linda's behavior and clarifying that no board member had authority to use private driveways without explicit owner permission. My concrete planters became neighborhood celebrities. People stopped by to admire them, ask about the plants, and compliment the design. One neighbor joked that I should start a decorative parking barrier business. Property values on our street actually increased that year. Turns out, professional landscaping improvements do boost curb appeal, exactly like the HOA bylaws claimed. Linda's Escalade now parked in guest spaces like everyone else. The few times I saw her around the neighborhood, she wouldn't make eye contact. She'd just hurry into her car and drive away. 6 months after the planter installation, Linda put her house on the market. The for sale sign went up on a Tuesday. She moved out within 30 days, relocating to a different neighborhood across town, somewhere she could start fresh without the daily reminder of her spectacular downfall. The day she moved, several neighbors came outside to watch. Nobody said anything. We just watched. It was petty. It was beautiful. As the moving truck pulled away, Mr. Patterson raised his coffee mug in a silent toast. We all raised ours back. 2 years later, my planters are still there, thriving and gorgeous. I've changed out the flowers seasonally: tulips in spring, petunias in summer, mums in fall, evergreen holly in winter. They've become one of the most photographed features in the neighborhood. 3 other neighbors have installed similar decorative planters, though none quite as massive as mine, to protect their own driveways from potential future HOA tyrants. The HOA board is now properly functional, with term limits and accountability measures that Patricia implemented. No more 7-year dictatorships. And me? I still drive past those planters every day, and every single time I smile. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction or confrontation or even exposure. Sometimes the best revenge is making bad behavior physically impossible to continue. Linda thought she could bully me because I was new, because I was an immigrant, because I seemed quiet and non-confrontational. What she didn't realize was that quiet people aren't weak, we're strategic. And concrete contractors know exactly how to create permanent solutions to temporary problems. If you're dealing with an entitled neighbor HOA tyrant, or anyone who thinks community authority means property ownership, here's my advice. 1. Document everything: every interaction, every parking incident, every conversation. I had photos, timestamps, and written records of every time Linda used my driveway. 2. Know your rights: read your HOA bylaws, city ordinances, and property laws. Knowledge is power, and it kept me legally bulletproof. 3. Stay calm. Linda wanted me to explode, to give her ammunition to paint me as the angry homeowner. I stayed professional and polite, which made her meltdowns look even worse. 4. Use creative solutions. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes you fight fire with 4 tons of decorative concrete. 5. Don't back down. Bullies rely on people giving up. The moment you stand your ground, professionally and legally, they often crumble. My planters cost $4,500 to install. Linda's attempted removal would have cost $18,000. Her reputation? Priceless. Well, actually, it cost her the HOA presidency and forced her to sell her house and move. So yeah, pretty expensive. But those planters? Still standing. Still beautiful. Still doing their job. And every time I pull into my driveway, I remember that sometimes the best foundations in life are made of concrete. If this story inspired you to defend your property rights, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales of satisfying justice. Share this with anyone dealing with entitled HOA nightmares. And drop your country in the comments. I want to know where my fellow property defenders are watching from. Thanks for reading, and remember, when someone tries to park on your property, don't get mad. Get cement.